It's not every day that a movie is extended to a franchise spanning 15 films, video games, comic books, and even merchandise. Today we'll be exploring one of the longest standing and most popular horror B-movie franchises, The Puppet Master. But if there's one thing it's not really great at, it's maintaining a consistent timeline. You'll get to know why and how in the course of our video, yet the fans have more or less ignored the inconsistency, raising it to a cult status and continued success, given that the franchise continues with new releases even after more than 30 years since the first film came out. There is a characteristic nature that films of full moon features have developed over the years, primarily owing to the low-budget philosophy to which it subscribes. Inside this, puppet masters have created their own independent identity, combining low budgets with dark humor, memorable practical effects, and cheeky storylines. Over the years, with changing technology and budget, the franchise has adapted or evolved to the different conditions. Let us discover whether the change was for the better or worse by diving into the Puppet Master universe through these 15 films. Before we get into our explanation though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. A small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Puppet Master, 1989. A group of psychics forms against a former colleague who has discovered animated murderous puppets. Let's talk about this one, which sparked off the development of an entire franchise. The original Puppet Master, released in 1989, was based on Charles Band's idea to produce low-budget horror films by incorporating elements of those with a more significant budget. The film begins by introducing us to the origins of the puppets and their master, Andre Toulon. The story, however, doesn't focus on the original Puppet Master, Andre Toulon, but the current Puppet Master, Neil Gallagher. Starting the storyline, Neil contacts his former acquaintances and fellow psychics through dreams and nightmares. At the same time, their arrival is marked, to their surprise, by the knowledge that Neil has killed himself and left instructions for them through his wife, Megan. We're then introduced to the iconic puppets in the film, but as the evil who kills most of the human characters cruelly, except for Megan and Alex. We get to see fan-favorite puppets Blade, Jester, Pinhead, and Leech Woman, along with the puppets Shredder Khan and Gengi, who are animated one by the now resurrected Neil. By the end, we get to know Neil's real motive, which was to make human puppets, but he should have been careful to proclaim his idea, as no one should disrespect the real puppet. Why? The climax will show you. Initially intended for a theatrical release, Charles Band pushed it to be released as direct-to-video, with the gamble paying off and the film becoming a cult classic with the iconic puppets to stay with us for the coming years. Puppet Master 2, 1990. Return of the puppets in a quest for brain fluid for their master, Andre Toulon. It didn't take long for the creators to understand the popularity and fan following Puppet Master commanded, and we got the series continuing into the second part in just a span of 1 year. David Allen, one of the best to provide stop-motion effects with puppets, was brought in to direct the only feature film in his entire career, Puppet Master 2. Even though he was one of the men behind the special effects in the original Puppet Master movies, spanning the first 5, he was not very popular on the shooting set. So much so that he would have had to leave the project midway if not for Charles Band's intervention. Moving forward to the story, Puppet Master 2 picks up from where Puppet Master left off. We soon learn that between the two films, a lot has happened. Megan is killed by Blade, and Alex is locked in an asylum, being the suspect behind the murders of the first film. A group of 4, Carolyn Bramwell, Patrick, Lance, and Wanda, are sent to investigate the death of Megan, but the most significant development in the film is Toulon's resurrection, who later believes Carolyn to be an incarnation of his wife, Elsa. This belief takes us to the origins of the animation of puppets in 1912. The puppets continue their evil part into the second movie as they go on with their mindless killings. The iconic puppets Torch, who has a flamethrower for his right hand, and Tunneler, who drills with his head, are introduced to the scene. We also get to see the puppets Mephisto and Jin the Homunculus in the flashback. In the original series, this is the last film where our puppets are in fan-favorite negative shade, yet the film isn't counted among the best. Puppet Master 3, 1991. A mysterious ability of a puppeteer to bring puppets to life catches Nazi attention during World War II. The first prequel in the series introduces us to the most famous face of Andre Toulon, Guy Rolfe, who stays with the franchise for the rest of the original lineup. For the first time in the series, we also learn about the origins of many of the prominent puppets. The film's events occur in Berlin in 1941 during World War II. The timeline gets distorted for what won't be the last time. We see a different one than what was was established in the first film, where we're shown that Toulon committed suicide in 1939. The movie begins with Dr. Hess's experiment, forced by his Gestapo liaison and the primary antagonist of the film, Major Krause. He's charged with creating a drug capable of reanimating corpses, which are to be used as shields for the war. Dr. Hess is successful in making such a drug, but the reanimated corpses are shown to indulge in insensible violence. On the other side, we have our protagonist, Andre Toulon, who is portrayed to be anti-Nazi and mocks Hitler and the Nazi rule through his puppet shows. Behind the puppet show, we realize that the puppets have already been animated. Soon, Major Krause, along with some other Nazis, discover the truth about the puppets. This leads to the antagonisms that drive the movie forward. The conflict results in the most tragic incident in the lore, the death of Toulon's wife, Elsa. The film turns the puppets and Toulon into the good guys. Even though this shade isn't what the fans wanted, it still managed to fuel the movie and be ascribed the status of one of the best in the franchise. Last but not least, this movie is also remembered for the introduction of the cowboy-modeled six-shooter who's going to stay for a long time with the franchise. Puppet Master 4, 1993, the story of a young scientist and his friends being protected against demons by the puppets. Although we're given hints about mystery and mysticism associated with the puppets animation, this is the first film that directly deals with it. The film introduces us to cosmic stuff with the introduction of the underworld of Hell and its demon lord, Sutekh. The film's villain, Sutekh, doesn't want anyone on Earth to possess the secret of animation. Thus, he sends his servants, the totems, to kill anyone with access to this secret. Sutekh's goal includes the elimination of Andre Toulon's magic as well. Meanwhile, on Earth, a team working on artificial intelligence is close to discovering Toulon's secret, and the totems start killing anyone who comes in their way. Circumstances lead to the introduction of our new puppet master, Rick Myers, who is a part of the group of scientists and the one who discovers the secret. With Sutekh's introduction, we become aware of the fact that it is the scroll which he is after. This scroll contains the method to create the life potion for the puppets, which originally belonged to Sutekh and was stolen. This film is an entertaining watch with a whole new dimension being opened, increasing the potential of the lore. We also see a new puppet, Decapitron, who needs an electric current to be animated, unlike others. The film is entertaining and a must-watch for understanding the larger Puppet Master universe. Puppet Master 5, 1994. The puppets battle their most powerful enemy, a demon god, to protect their new master. As the film's full name suggests, Puppet Master 5, the final chapter, was intended to be the last film in the original storyline. The later movies were supposed to be spin-offs. The idea was altered due to the widespread demands to continue the storyline. Although packed with some exciting parts, this film has often been branded as an extension of the fourth part, and its release as a separate film was kind of unnecessary. By the way, the original idea of the creators was similar to this popular reception. The story picks up just where the fourth film ended, with Rick Myers under arrest as the suspect for the murders of Dr. Piper and Baker. The film then brings in the character of Dr. Jennings, the new director of the Artificial Intelligence Project, who's on the lookout for the puppets. But we soon become aware that he is guided by some shady funding. The primary antagonist is still our villain from the previous film, Sutekh. His entry to Earth this time was marked by the infusion of his own life essence with a totem figure. Continuing the role of the protagonists, the puppets fight back and safeguard the human beings around them. The film, however, has a lesser share of the franchise's characteristic violence, which has a significant role in elevating the franchise to cult status. But if you're binge watching, this movie can be watched just to understand how the creators originally planned to wrap things up. Curse of the Puppet Master, 1998. A scientist joins the bandwagon as he attempts to learn the secret of animating puppets. After a 4-year hiatus, the franchise returns with a soft reboot. The reception and following of the campy franchise was such that it just couldn't end at the 5th movie and had to make a comeback. The story is entirely disconnected, so much so that there's no mention of the original Puppet Master, Toulon. In The Curse of the Puppet Master, we have a new Puppet Master, Dr. McGrew, obsessed with creating a human puppet hybrid by transferring the human soul ultimately into a puppet. Dr. McGrew stays with his daughter, Jane. Soon, Robert enters their life as he is saved from the bully, Joey, by them. Robert is offered a job by McGrew, which he accepts. It's only in the climax that we understand the dark motives of McGrew towards the loving, warm carpenter-slash-puppet mechanic, Robert. The origin of the puppet tank is linked with the encounter between McGrew and Robert, which we're skipping because we want you to watch it. Unlike most of the films in the franchise, Curse of the Puppet Master doesn't compensate for the lack of money by providing exaggerated horror, gore, and bloody slasher scenes. Instead, it attempts to play more with the emotions, which also lacked consistency. The film was a miss for those who came to see a Puppet Master movie. Retro Puppet Master, 1999, a story of an Egyptian sorcerer who discovers the secret of animating puppets. By the time of Retro Puppet Master, die-hard fans of the franchise had accepted their fate to see a jumbled-up timeline, changing it again by returning to the original story and Sutek as the primary antagonist. This is the last film with Guy Rolfe playing the role of older Andre Toulon, who was still on the run in 1944. We are then taken back to 1902 to his youth when he was a charming puppeteer as Toulon narrates the story of his evolution as a puppet master and his adventures. Yes, the storyline changes here as this film takes us to 1902 instead of 1912 as established in the second film. The film also introduces Afzel, a 3,000-year-old sorcerer, as the origin of Toulon's abilities. Afzel is portrayed as the one who stole the secret of life from Sutek, and Sutek sends his henchmen to kill Afzel, but before he is killed, he transfers the knowledge to Toulon. Further, Afzel tells him that the knowledge is necessary for the survival of humankind when the Elder Gods descend upon them. The fans are still waiting for clarification on whether this is a soft reboot, as Rolfe is recast to play the role of Toulon, and the film is set as a prequel and sequel to the third film. If the film was released as a standalone without trying to fit into the larger storyline, it could have been more interesting, having the potential to open up a new world. However, by bringing us back to ground zero, the film fails to do so. Further, the scares are few, and the film ends up as kind of a rom-com rather than a low-budget horror movie that the fans wanted. Nevertheless, the designs of the retro versions of the puppet were a hit, and if there were a backstory given to Cyclops and Dr. Death, it would definitely create a following of its own. Puppet Master: The Legacy, 2003. The pursuing of Peter Hertz, the new puppet master, and the kids saved by Toulon in the 1940s by an assassin. It would always be challenging to categorize Puppet Master: The Legacy as a film, whatever the creator's intentions may have been. The reason is that only 7 out of the total 70 minutes of showtime were something new, with the rest being recycled footage from old films. The film follows McLean, a rogue agent who kills all the present puppet masters. According to her, the puppets see it as a cage from which they want to escape and transform back into human beings. Further, McLean attributes the bloody history of the puppets to this. Her ultimate goal is to bring the end of the puppets once and for all. Much of the story takes place as Peter Hertz, the boy saved by Toulon from the Nazis, recalls all the happenings till then to McLean, also telling her how it was because of the puppets that the world as they know it is still fighting battles that one could never imagine. Ultimately, the title of the Puppet Master is passed on to Hertz in this film. The flashbacks with recycled footage have been deemed lazy and meaningless if you don't know the backstory itself. I mean, the footage didn't include the best scenes from the previous Puppet Masters, and if raising nostalgia was the intention, it failed miserably. The movie acts as the epitome of disorganized, unplanned filmmaking, as it often tries to mix films with different storylines that contradict each other. Thus, this adds to the confusion about the lore of the universe. Legacy, which was released after a gap of 4 years, may have been intended as a climax, as it ends with a note thanking the cast and crew for making it a success without a coherent climax at all. Anyway, we now know that this intention also didn't materialize. Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys, 2004. Attempts by a group of evil toy makers to use Andre Toulon's formula to animate killer toys. This is basically 2 classical Full Moon Pictures universes coming together for a Christmas special. The crossover sounds interesting, but Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys failed to incorporate the soul of both films, and it wasn't a big success. The film cannot be seen as a complete Full Moon production or being a sci-fi original, which could be a reason for its failure. Still, it did bring onto screen some of the cheap schlocky film elements expected from B-movies. In the film, the Puppet Master title comes back to the Toulon family, with Robert Toulon, the great-nephew of Andre Toulon, and his daughter Alexandra coming into possession of the puppets, whom they animate. On the other hand, we're introduced to the demonic toys and Erica Sharp, their master, who cannot subdue the toys and therefore wants to possess the puppets who could be loyal to her. The story develops through this primary conflict and clashes between the puppets and their puppet master on the positive side, with Erica Sharp and her demonic toys playing the role of the antagonist. It's worth mentioning that this is the only Puppet Master film that doesn't feature Tunneler, with Leech Woman also being absent. The film isn't considered part of both Puppet Master and Demonic Toys canon, and therefore can still be missed without missing much from either world. But if you're looking for a film to play in the background while doing chores, this one could be the fit. Puppet Master: Axis of Evil, 2010. A young man unites with a group of animated puppets to stop the Nazis. Puppet Master: Axis of Evil starts a trilogy inside the franchise, given that it mixes up the universe's timeline again. I know the pain, but yes, again. In the first film of the franchise, we're shown that Toulon dies by suicide in 1939, which gets rebooted in Puppet Master 3 and Retro Puppet Master, which shows him alive and kicking in 1941. I would like to believe that the 10th film in the franchise was an attempt to bring the franchise franchise back to the original intended timeline of the first film. That much said, the story begins just before Toulon's suicide and brings into the story Danny Coogan, an American nationalist. Our hero, Coogan, is shown to be sad for being unable to contribute to the American war efforts because of his limp, and thus decides to help Toulon. This leads to him discovering the puppet's secrets and becoming the puppet master after Toulon's death. And yes, Coogan joins the war by fighting the Nazis and the Japanese antagonists using his puppets. This film is particularly remembered for bringing back to the series, after a long time, a gory kill. And it's the leech lady who does the honors, as she kills a character by coughing up a leech on the sushi, which, on eating, kills them from the inside out. Regardless, at this point, it's more or less clear that the franchise has nothing new to offer, as the film delves back into the Nazis and the 1940s. The film's problematic aspects cannot be ignored either. It may have been an attempt to comment on the casual racism of the 1940s war-torn US, but the stereotypes and the language go beyond making a point, and that just adds to the already overwhelming negatives of this film. Puppet Master X, Axis Rising, 2012. Danny and Beth make a comeback to stop Nazi attempts to create a race of immortal soldiers. Puppet Master X, Axis Rising starts right off from where Axis of Evil ends in terms of both storyline and cringe racism. The plot follows Danny's exploits against the Nazis. On the other hand, the Nazis, led by Commandant Mobius, force a captured Austrian, Dr. Frühhofer, to create an army of the undead, but in the end, what he manages to build are new puppets with explosive powers. Much of the film follows the evil side's plottings while nothing much happens. The introduction of the new puppets is the only saving grace, and we have some fights, or on a minuscule level, a war of the puppets in the film. This is when one starts questioning Charles Band's original idea, as the movie gets cheaper than what we're expecting. The strings attached are now visible along with the bad acting. The franchise veers off from horror to cringe fest of poorly made historical drama at this point. The film just manages to save a tiny section of its followers for a sequel. Puppet Master, Axis Termination, 2017. A soldier and a group of psychics, with the help of Toulon's puppets, seeks to end evil Nazi experiments. This one's the best film of the trilogy, and there's little debate about it. Puppet Master, Axis Termination indeed was helped by the increasing funds through crowdfunding. The change is for the better, with lighting, action sequences, and the stop-motion effects getting a makeover. Nonetheless, the positives end here, and we have a film that adds little to the original idea of the series. The story starts with our main characters from the previous two films in the trilogy, Danny and Beth, getting killed by a Nazi spy. What was the point of developing these two characters over the last two films then? We don't have an answer for you, but anyways, the story moves on and we get to know that the Nazis here started reviving their puppets. They start wreaking havoc as 8 American citizens, including a general, are killed. Captain Brooks is tasked with teaming up with a team of psychics to make the puppets join the war effort. Gradually, they all team up to fight the Nazis, led by Sturmbannführer Krabke, the strongest of the psychics in the film. Oh yes, the fans got a saving grace, as many of them got the chance to feature in the film as Nazi thugs after contributing to a part of the production cost. However, this wasn't enough to save the film, and the popular emotion amongst the fans was happiness that the trilogy finally got terminated. Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich, 2018. A bloody mayhem as a strange force animates puppets up for auction at a convention. After almost 3 decades of following the same lore, Puppet Master gets a reboot, becoming the first film Fangoria produced. The transfer from Full Moon to Fangoria is accompanied by the central character, the original Puppet Master André Toulon, being introduced as a Nazi instead of the original Nazi-hating Puppet Master. Along with his Nazi supremacism, he garners all the hate that supremacists around the world have, including queerphobia and hate towards people of color. The film, at the beginning, kills Toulon, who murders a bartender using his puppets when he learns that she's a lesbian, only to be killed by police officer Carol Doreski. All of this happens in 1989, while the current story happens in 2019 when Edgar Easton discovers Blade the puppet. The sentient puppets are still controlled by Toulon, who's been interred in a mausoleum with peculiar specifications according to his will. Thus, we see a return to the puppets being portrayed as antagonists as per the first 2 films. However, this time they're more cruel while also being guided by racial and sexual hatred. Most of the story happens in a hotel named Brass Buckle Hotel, in which Toulon's creations are being auctioned. The hotel is adjoined to Toulon's mausoleum. Soon, mishaps start, and we witness brutal killings at the hotel. Only Blade, Pinhead, and Tunneler make a comeback, while we're also presented with a rebooted version of Torch in Kaiser. The film, made on a higher budget, uncharacteristic of Puppet Master films, brings back the older film's blood, gore, and explicit nature. The horror element also makes a comeback thanks to the return of the puppets as antagonists. The film, however, should be watched expecting not the typical Puppet Master movie goofiness, but for the change it provides. Blade, the Iron Cross, 2020. A psychic war journalist develops a psychic bond with a murderous puppet and their subsequent attempts to destroy Nazi forces. Full Moon took almost 3 decades to release its first standalone, a spin-off from the original series. But the film was long awaited as the fans wanted movies dedicated to the iconic puppets for a long time. Regardless, Blade, the Iron Cross jumbles up the timeline and story even more as it's established that the only role the puppets played, ever, was to fight the Nazis. The story happens in 1944 to 45, with Blade being the only puppet left who can move, even though he has little elixir left in his body. Blade is currently in the possession of Ivan and Elisa. Circumstances lead to a psychic blood bond being created between Blade and Elisa. On the other end of the story, we have the Nazi Hauser, who continues the old project of animating the dead. We are soon made aware that Blade has the soul of the old Dr. Hess, the one who wanted to work with Toulon before being killed by the Nazis. What follows is a story of bloody revenge, wherein the killer puppet Blade only has one aim: to kill all the Nazis. This one's a great relief from the dramas and comedies the franchise has recently become. Nevertheless, the Nazis being introduced again is tiring to watch, bringing nothing new to the formula. Given the franchise's nature, it isn't easy to believe that the rebooted storyline will stay. Amidst all this, the film is a good watch for fans of old, low-budget slasher films. Puppet Master, Dr. Death, 2022. The unleashing of a murderous puppet in a ramshackle nursing home. One thing that Retro Puppet Master gave the fans is an unending curiosity regarding what happened to the original puppets of Andre Toulon. After a very long wait, we have a spin-off of Retro Puppet Master, which taps into the eager wait of the fans, Puppet Master, Dr. Death. One of the original puppets of Toulon is brought back, and now we know that his original puppets, or at least Dr. Death, is alive. The story happens in a nursing home, starting with an old man, Max, and his death. Although the plot doesn't spend much time on Max's backstory, we're shown him having nightmares from old wars through old stock footage of Puppet Master movies. The next day, our main character, April, comes to the nursing home as a caretaker. We later discover Dr. Death and the realization that he is animate. This leads to horrors for the inmates of the nursing home, and the movie delivers what we expect from Full Moon: gruesome kills. The film's climax gives us a twist wherein April, who had come to the hospital searching for her relative, finds them. The film is a must-watch for the franchise's hardcore fans and shows that Full Moon isn't done with the original lore, which many expected after the Littlest Reich reboot. Though still not enough to be counted among the best, Dr. Death instills a new life into the franchise and gives it the potential to expand even farther. Marvelous conclusion! We expect a few things from Full Moon movies today, and Puppet Master has played a significant role in developing those notions and expectations. However, the franchise wouldn't be able to sustain itself solely on the nostalgia for the first few films, which it's been trying to do for a long time now. This led to oversaturation and repetition in the franchise with nothing new to offer. But with the latest releases, a bit more fuel has been added to the fire. What we currently have is conflicting news about the future of the franchise, but fans hold out hope that Leech Woman finally gets her own story in the previously announced Puppet Master Furnace Leech Woman. Regardless, there is a reason for the franchise to have a dedicated cult following of its own, and Full Moon needs to work on bringing back that good old goofy slasher film charm. That's all we got for you this time, but let us know your favorite Puppet Master film in the comments down below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.